Hello everyone and welcome to Logo Evolution. Notably in the corner called Logo History, that was actually its working title, which I've not actually updated since the last 2 episodes we've done. This is episode 3 and we are looking at the BBC. Now, when it comes to the BBC, it is a very big animal. Now, of course it's obviously called the British Broadcasting Corporation, and it was established in 1922 as a public service broadcaster, and there's a lot of different rules and regulations that go along with being a public service broadcaster. There's a lot of rules you have to abide by, and it's the world's oldest and largest national broadcasting organisation, if I can English. The UK viewing public, sometimes referred to as the Beeb, when rounded, it employs 21,000 to 36,000 staff, including those who work in the broadcasting sector, as well as those who work part-time, and other different kind of employability systems that you might be on. And of course, to the annoyance of a lot of people who watch the BBC or watch television in general, the BBC is of course funded by an annual licence fee, which is basically required for you to watch public television kind of thing. You like watch live TV. You can own a television without any of the requirements if you decide you want to use the television for other purposes. For instance, a computer monitor, or you just want to watch a recorded stuff, like watch DVDs and so forth. But most of the time, if you want to receive live television, you have to pay a TV licence. And of course, a lot of people in the United Kingdom are not big fans of it, even to this day, because in this modern world with internet and so forth, it's kind of old-fashioned. And of course, there are other sectors where the BBC do integrate content, such as their BBC Studio Works. As the time of this episode's recording, the BBC do, of course, earn money from like royalties from other companies around the world broadcasting their content, as well as anyone who purchases their content, such as on their own official like download center that you can buy a lot of episodes of different shows from, or even like DVDs and streaming services that issue BBC content. So it's got a variety of different sources it gets its revenue from, but the primary one is a TV licence fee. Now, of course, in America and other like places around the world where the BBC is a third-party channel, of course it will utilise advertising. But let's continue on. So this is the coat of arms that was given to the BBC upon it being founded, as you could probably say, for lack of a better term, back in 1927. So here we go. Of course, it was called the British Broadcasting Company. It wasn't actually owned by the public yet until later on, but of course it was founded for radio purposes, and of course it did have other things going on behind the scenes that would help along when it comes to television. And of course the coat of arms, there wasn't actually a viable logo at the time. It was just the coat of arms, and the coat of arms was mostly used on a lot of material such as, I think, letters and merchandise, as it said, like stationery sets, and I can't remember what other things it was used for at the top of my head right now, but the coat of arms was also used for a variety of different things alongside it just existing, and furniture within the organisation itself would have like the coat of arms on it. And there was a couple of inches in time where the BBC News side of things, there was actually a version of the coat of arms being used, I think even in the backdrop or even in the title sequence for BBC News back in, I think it was during the 90s when it was being used. But it's seen on stationery, it's seen on many different places. It's seen on stationery sets. It's correspondence is another thing, which I think goes back into the whole thing about letters and so forth that you would get. Now, of course, if you were to receive a physical letter or an email from the BBC, you'd get the the logo that I will talk about later on in this episode, but here we go. That is the coat of arms as it was introduced in 1927. This is the updated one, which is not from 1927, that's actually from 1988, so that is actually incorrect. I do apologise for that. Not too different between the last one, just a little bit slightly different. It's not too different. Still got the base design there. I'm not going to go into what everything all means and everything else. You can kind of read on screen. It says, nation shall speak peace unto nation. And it says the exact same thing on the updated coat of arms. Of course, as I said, things like broadcasting house, furniture and all sorts would have the coat of arms somewhere in the building or on assets. Up next is the BBC television ident or logo. This is how the BBC represented themselves in television, of course, as quoted by many media. A new medium needed a new way to distinguish itself, and this is what the BBC chose. It was designed by a 20th century designer called Abraham Games, and he's apparently well beloved back in that time. And the model was actually what was designed from. It was actually a model that was used, that was animated and do all things, and the little like eye-shaped things would spin around in circles, and it was mechanical, and there's a lot of animation going on with it, which you may see if I pop up an animation of it in its animated form. Now, it was said that a lot of viewing public at the time didn't actually like it. They thought it was kind of ugly and thought it was kind of demonic and so forth, and it was actually nicknamed the Batwings because of that, and that's what has been well known to be called to this day. And of course, as it was made as a model, it was made with little bits of metal like brass and piano wire, and it was actually so delicate that it had to be pre-recorded, and this is back in the 1930s. Going into the 1960s, most television broadcasts had to be recorded live for the simple reason that pre-recorded equipment didn't exist in a viable form at that time. So of course, yes, this was pre-recorded. It's kind of fascinating by that. And another fun fact, apparently once Abraham Games had pre-shot one rotation of this in action, the model actually broke down. So that proves it to you. If you want to do art or something like that, just think your failures help you learn. And Abraham Games, in this case, did have a failure on his hands because he could only get one recording out of this, and then the mechanical model broke down. I think it's quite a beautiful little model, but a lot of people at the time didn't actually like it. It's quite futuristic, even though it's in the 1930s. You can kind of see it's got kind of sharp edges, and it looks very, I don't know, it seems very like futuristic. It seems like nothing you would actually expect it from the 1930s, because the 1930s was all about sophistication and so forth, and that's one reason why people hated it, because it didn't look very sophisticated, and it was very low. It wasn't very, I don't know if the right term I'm looking for is lowbrow or anything like that, but it wasn't highbrow. It was very like down to earth, and its approach, I think, it was quite beautiful, and it had a very, when it was playing on live TV, it would have a kind of like a harp sound to it, and the lights, there would be lights that show on the wing things, whatever you call them, the little wings. The wings would actually flash little lights and everything else to the tune of the music. Now, it was said by the BBC at the time, who were asked about why it existed, basically, and they says the abstract pattern consists of two intersecting eyes which can scan the globe from north to south to east to west, symbolising vision and the power of vision. Flashes of lightning on either side represent electrical forces, and the whole form takes the shape of wings, which suggests the creative possibilities of television broadcasting. Spread your wings, basically. And as already mentioned, a lot of fans at the time didn't really like it, and of course it was replaced by a globe. Now, I will be discussing branding and logos of different BBC services and products later down the line in this series. But right now we are talking about the base corporate logo. So, as I say, I'm showing this because this is technically, alongside the coat of arms, their corporate logo at the time. Until there we go, it works. It's not broken anymore. This was the BBC logo that was introduced in 1958. And as you can see, the three boxes have never changed too much. It's still got the BBC in them, but it's got a different font to them. Not too much to say about that. A lot of things like television cameras and many other things as well. It wasn't really shown on TV too much, but it was shown on the what was called at the time. Now it's called BBC One. It was called BBC Television Service at the time. It was shown underneath a little globe that would be used after the Batwings logo was replaced. Now basically, as you can see on the screen, it's straight up boxes, but the text is slanted, or italics as we call them now. Now, apparently, Abraham Games came back on to create this logo. Basically, Abraham Games, you can probably think of him as a modern Lambinairn. You know how Lambinairn, he designed the logo that was introduced, that is still used now, but we'll get onto that, as I say. And he was commissioned for that. The font apparently is called Universe, which is spelled UNIVERS. Introduced in 1957 and used in 1958. So moving on. A slight difference, not too different, but all what's happened right now is, compared to the previous logo, is the boxes have now slanted. And this kind of branding system would still be used for another few batches of logos. And that was introduced in 1962. It's kind of disputed. 1962, 1963. So basically, it was introduced in September 1963, but that's disputed as well. And of course, it's the same logo, but just with slanted boxes. The type of logo would go on captions at the end of broadcasts, similar to how the logo is used now. And then about this time as well, which this logo was used, it was also used on the introduction of BBC Two. And what would happen on that logo was a 2 would come down from the top, and the BBC logo would come up from the bottom, and kind of mirroring how it would be shown later on in future idents of BBC Two and then the 1990s batch. But there we go. And 1971 was given just a little bit of a softer touch. The same font was used, never really changed so much, but the boxes were still slanted, but they were rounded this time, so giving that a nice softer look. Well, in my opinion anyways. And kind of larger than the previous set, and of course compared to this one, the boxes are kind of spread apart a little bit, which kind of looks a bit weird to me. Then we go on to 1988 to 1997, this slanted box logo, which introduced 3 additional assets to the logo. These 3 underlining lines of different colours. Now, this logo was introduced in 1988 and was used all the way to 1997. And 1998, the reason why that's there on your screens right now, 1997, 1998, is because even during the 1997 rebrand of the BBC, a couple of services such as can't remember what you call it. I think the service was called BBC Clwyd, BBC Radio Clwyd, I think it was. I think it was in Wales. I think that's how you call it. It's spelled CLWYD, I think. I'm not really good with Welsh terms and words, but the logo was still used on some services until just slightly after 1997, until some of them were closed down, which BBC Radio Clwyd in that regard. So please let me know if in the comments below if I'm pronouncing that right, because I've been googling it for ages trying to see how it's pronounced, and doesn't seem to be very, very helpful. So let's go to the final one now, the one that's used currently to this very day. And of course there is a lot of history with this one. The BBC got help from Lambinairn. We all know this story. Most of us who don't, I'm just telling you right now. The BBC took on Martin Lambinairn to help basically rebrand BBC 1 and 2 at the time to look almost identical to each other, basically. So basically designing a 1 which was basically a step up from the gold and blue globe that was used in the 1980s on BBC 1, and also to redesign BBC 2 to the well-known 2 idents used in the 1990s. Now, of course, Lambinairn was told alongside his company at that time, basically, hey, Martin, could you take the current logo at this time, this current logo, and go off and quote-unquote play with it, I think was the word that was used at the time. And it was just like, I don't play with logos and everything else, so it was just like, okay, let's take a look at it. Apparently the BBC also incorporated another 2 or 3 entities to try and help sort it out, kind of thing. And they all agreed that it wasn't just as simple as one little tweak. Of course, the BBC was going into a lot of different other sectors, including the internet and a lot of modern media entities as well. So they wanted to rebrand in order to fit in a little bit more as we're going into the 21st century. And of course, as you can probably tell, the major change that was caused to the 3 boxes was ever since the 1960s, the BBC boxes have been put back upright, and a new font was introduced called Gill Sans, and it was incorporated at that time because Gill Sans was actually a 20th century alongside Abraham Games, of course. Gill Sans was created by a guy called, I think it was called Eric Gill, and the ironic thing is, Eric Gill's artwork, he used to quite a lot of art and so forth. A lot of his artwork is actually surrounded around BBC's broadcasting house. So it was a fitting mix. So of course, what Martin Lambinairn asked for was, so that the BBC would look a little bit more corporate, was they would redesign the BBC logo to make it simple. So that one of the issues with the previous logo was, when shrunken down, it wasn't as recognisable, and what was called the counters, which are little dots inside the B's, would disappear. The lines would disappear depending on the aspect ratio that they were used in. In some like media such as books and so forth, the logo, certain assets of the logo would disappear. So another reason why they chose Gill Sans is because the counters on the B's were slightly larger, so even when the logo was shrunken down far enough, the BBC logo was still distinguishable. So alongside that, they also decided to scrap the current branding process, because basically the BBC's got many different services, many different brands that they want to incorporate, and of course they all had their own different thing going on. Basically, it was all daft, and there's actually a film that Lambinairn showed of all of the different logos in use. Things like Children in Need, all the different radio stations, all of the different other ventures they go into, and the BBC channels at the time, they all had different brands on them, different font types, different shapes, different this and that and the next thing. And then you had tweaks to the original logo. I think I remember a BBC brand called Audio Call. I can't remember what it was used for. It took this logo, but it completely got rid of the boxes, and in the middle, where the boxes once were, keeping the little lines underneath, had Audio Call in it. So just to try and make everything, consistent and be fitting when it enters the 21st century. It was just decided to make the BBC corporate kind of thing. So you'd have this logo that would be used on all media, and then you'd have, you know, the brands and so forth being added after the one. Basically, I think a concept at the time called BBC Anything. So you'd have the BBC itself, you'd have BBC One next to it, so ONE at the side, BBC Two, TWO, and of course BBC Two kept its twos, and the BBC One had actually rebranded to incorporate the globe hot air balloon. But that was basically the concept back in 1997, was to, in order to make everything consistent, keep the logos the same. And all you needed to do, if you're going to create new brands, just add whatever you liked at the end of the BBC logo, and that was it. And everything looked consistent, everything was from the same company, and it was consistent. It was all the same. Of course, nowadays they still use the 3-box logo, but they've added their own font type. They've got all that kind of lovely stuff now. And of course, they went back to that old concept of having different logos for different things. Still on the consistent side, but they're not as consistent as before. You've got this logo, and then you've got the BBC's new font type. I think it's called BBC Reef at the time of this recording. But yeah, that is the logo that has been used to this very day, and it's iconic. Even though it's simple, that is arguably what makes it so iconic, is because it's distinctive. It's seen from everywhere. You get this, and you know exactly what company it is that this logo represents. And that's that. And all I have to say after that is thanks very much for watching. And if anything is being said that's been incorrect, please let us know down in the comments below, because I am not perfect. I am not the BBC. Channel 13 is not the BBC. We are our own little thing. And if you like, please join us on our Twitter, and also if you want to direct message us on email, there's our email on the screen right here. But hey, that's that. Thanks for watching Logo Evolution, and I will talk to you next time. I am Rick, and I'll see you later. Bye.